So today I'm going to try to cut the piece of stone that will go here in the window sill. We have the piece that I have found is 127 centimeters from side to side. It's 33 centimeters deep. Now, it's a square or a rectangle, and this thing has sloped sides and is only about 26 to 27 centimeters deep to come toward me. So I'm going to have somewhere around 7 centimeters overhanging or like a lip there, and it's going to extend out on the sides about 7 centimeters as well. So I've got to cut an angle and a straight portion. I got to cut like a corner out of each side, and I'm just going to use a stone cutting bit to do that, and my big angle grinder. So here's the big stone piece that I found. This was the top of an electric heater, and the guy was renovating his house and getting rid of the electric heaters, and so he had offered these up for free, and so we picked up 2 of them. One of them has like a little stain on it from where he had some sort of jar or plate or something on there, so we've got that one in the greenhouse. But this one turned out to be a really nice piece, and I'm going to use my big angle grinder to slice off the chunks I need to slice off. And it's already like machined pretty nicely. It's got like a nice little bevel on top and bottom. It's been polished on all the edges. So I'm going to have about 7 centimeters here, and then it's going to cut straight here and then at an angle down toward the bottom. So I'm going to cut out each rear corner and slide it in place for the new window seat. And this is the big grinder that I'm going to be using. So my blade here is good enough to get me through that 7 centimeters that I need to cut away. So I'm going to be cutting 7 centimeters away in one direction and then like 26 centimeters in the other direction. So this is perfect to cut into the 7 centimeters, and then I can just cut the 26 centimeters and break out as I go along. So this is my measurements on what I've got to cut out, and these 2 angles are not exactly the same, so I'm going to use the little angle finder to get as close as I can to what those are, and then do my measurements and tape that off onto the piece of stone and draw it, and then we'll get to cutting it. All right, so I used my T-bevel to get each individual angle set, and they're a few degrees apart. This one's definitely a bigger angle than the other one. And so I've got those marked, and now I'm going to just confirm all the measurements and start cutting. All right, so I've got my angles marked, and I have myself a range here. So this was the original angle, but when I measured this point here, I've got about 1 centimeter of play that I can have with no issues at all. And then down here, I have a couple of centimeters of play between, over the distance. So as long as I'm inside this line, there should be plenty of overhang of the current material. So this will slide into a groove. And then if I need to, I can shape the window, or I can come back and grind this a little bit to make it fit perfect. But I think this is going to be cutting away 95% of the material that I will need to remove, and then I can fine tune it once I've fit it in there and see how it works. I may need to trim a little bit here, and I may need to trim a little bit off the sides or something. We'll see which one is easier. I think cutting the window sill is going to be the easiest, but I'm going to get this cut first, fit it in there, and see how it looks. So I've got my head sock on to protect my hair, my scalp, and my skin. And I've got this face shield and mask, vapor mask, to protect me from the dust. This stone dust, I mean, it gets really bad really fast, and the dust will dry your skin out really bad. So I'm gonna put this on and then start cutting. Well, that actually wasn't as dusty as I thought it would be, but you can see it's still pretty dusty. But it is cut, and I'm going to go take it in and fit it now. All right, you can see here that I'm a little bit tight. This is a really thick piece of stone here, and the original piece in here was not this thick. This is 3 or more than 3 centimeters thick, and usually they're like 2.5, between 2 and 2.5. So I'm going to have to shave some of the material off of the wall. We're tight on both sides, and it looks like I have plenty of room in the back, but right here at the front is really tight. Now I may be able to take a little bit off the bottom. As you can see here, I've got some gap until I get right to the edge. Same thing on this one, gap right over to the edge, and then there's a little high spot right here in the middle. So I'm going to shave those down first and then see how that works out. All right, that went in. We have a little bit of gap here, which I can still go back a little bit further there, but I've gotten really tight for one reason or another. So same thing on this side. Now I'm fitting pretty tight here, but I still have a pretty good gap back here. I just need to get it under the window is really as far as it needs to go. But I think with just a little bit of minor adjustment, that's going to fit in there really nice. So I think what I'm going to do is try to chisel out some of the high spots, because this is not perfectly square on the inside of this cut. I'm going to chisel out some areas in there and see if I can get this one to seat right up against the wall. And I may actually just cut maybe like half a blade or a blade thickness off of here, or half a centimeter or something like that, and that will let this go back and get up under the window. And then any gap that I might have here, I'm actually going to add 2 to 3 millimeters, maybe even 4 millimeters of plaster coat. So even if this is not cut perfectly, it should be okay. And I think we're going to have this thing fitting in here real nice. So it looks like we might be touching right here. So I'm going to take it, just slide it out a little bit and shave off some of this material underneath here and see if I can get it to go under the window. All right, so I'm still a little bit tight along that window edge, and I think it's because I've got some harder stone that I just can't scrape away. So I decided to use my chisel rather than the grinder. The grinder makes a huge mess. I mean, it stirs up a ton of dust. So I'm just going to use this air hammer and just kind of use the bit here, this really wide bit, to scrape off the tops of what I need. All right, nice tight fit. Nice tight fit up against the insulation, under the window, nice tight fit. And I've got a half a centimeter or something there, a couple millimeters, but that's fine. And we're touching the wall here. So now what I need to do is get this permanently installed with some construction adhesive, and then we can fill in the areas here with the middle puts, the half puts here. The middle coat of plaster will fill in all the gaps and make that look nice. What I've been using is a really thin piece of glass that I slide under there. Then I mud it all up and just let it dry with the glass in place. And then I can just slide the glass out. And that leaves this little tiny crevice that will allow for a little bit of expansion and contraction, and also give me just a little bit of room to throw just a little bit of caulk in there and finish it off. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull this back out, vacuum and clean really good, So before I put this permanently in, I'm gonna go ahead and do some quick sanding around the frame and put a coat of paint on it so that it just makes it a little easier to paint later because I've already got that coat of paint already, like really close to the surface. Now I'll still have to tape it and paint it with a brush for the final coat, but I wanna go ahead and just prepare the frame with a little paint. So I'm gonna just do a little quick coat on here before I put the piece in. All right, so I've got a nice little coat on here. I'm gonna let this dry. It's really, really thin. I did a quick sanding with 180 grit sandpaper, and I just put a really quick skim coat on that's gonna dry really fast. And then I'll come back and put a thicker coat on with a brush. All right, so we're gonna let that dry and maybe do another quick coat. It's not taking very long because I got the room pretty warm in here with the wood stove going. So I'm gonna let that dry off for maybe another 5 minutes, throw another quick coat on, and then we'll get ready prepping for for gluing this part in. All right, so I've got 2.5 coats of paint on this bottom section. I didn't go ahead and paint the whole window because you're talking about a little bit more time than what I want to spend on painting the window. And so I just wanted to get enough so that where the window seat touches the window is already white, and I'm not trying to get a super close finish there. So that's good. Now I'm just going to let that dry, and then we can put our window seat in. Now, a little trick that I use to keep from having to use so many rollers and paintbrush, cleaning my paintbrush, is I have these vinyl gloves that are just super cheap. And so I have enough paint on my roller so that it's wet. I don't want it to be super dry, but I don't want it to be also like dripping with paint. So I take that and I stick it inside the glove, and then I seal off as good as I can around the edges so that it doesn't get dry. And then that will last for a really long time, especially if it's in a cold environment. So I usually keep this in my garage, so it's pretty cold out there, and I've been using this roller for a couple of weeks now. So I use it, I just stick it back in the same glove, and it hasn't dried out yet. Now it does stop rolling as good, but as long as you're not doing finish work with it, it works just fine. So I also do that with my brushes if I'm going to be using them in the same day or the same few hours. But now if I'm not going to be using them the same day, I go ahead and clean my brushes really good, because once your brushes start drying out, they're not going to work really well. So I keep my brushes really clean. I've had brushes for years and years and years, and they still look pretty new. They look like they've only been used a few times, where sometimes you see people and it looks like this thing it's like 20 years old and it's only been used a couple of times. So keeping your tools clean will make them last a lot longer. The brush will function much better. The way the bristles will lay the way they're supposed to lay when you're actually doing it. So just a little, I don't know if you can see this in the camera, but I paint all the way across, and then I paint up and down on this piece here. So I have brush strokes growing up and down here and side to side here. So I paint all the way across, and then I have the edge of the brush just touch that crack or seam there where the wood goes through. So that makes the brush strokes in the direction of the wood grain. And that just makes it look a little bit more professional. You don't have to do that, but it just it looks a lot more professional when the brush strokes go with the full length of the wood. So brush strokes starting here, going across, and starting at the bottom and going up. So I did that with a really clean new brush, and you can see it looks pretty nice, and it's not even the final coat. So yeah, that's just a little trick to save you from losing these roller covers, because those can get expensive, and cleaning them out is it takes a lot of time and a lot of water, and sometimes it's not worth it. I can buy 5 or 6 of these for just a few bucks. So if I can just keep it wet for a few days, then it's worth it to me to never have to clean those. Once they start getting stiff or some dry spots in them and they're not rolling really good, I just take them and throw them away and start over. All right, so my paint is dry enough so that I can put this top in. And so now I'm going to be using construction adhesive. I'm going to put a little seam on the back next to the styrofoam, a couple of little dabs in the middle, and then a nice seam across the front to seal it down and make it really nice and sealed from any air movement. And then we'll set it in place and push it nice and tight. Now I've got it set in place, everything looks nice, everything's fitting tight, and I'm just going to put a nice bead on the bottom side here right next to the wall material. All right, so we have it fully installed. It is fitting nice and tight to the window, fitting nice and tight to the wall on both sides. Really nice part for free. This piece of material would probably cost probably upwards of a couple of €100 just for the one piece, based on polishing the surface, the face, and the sides, and having the chamfer on the top and the bottom and around the corners. This is a really nice piece of stone and looks really nice. Well, thanks for watching, guys. This job is done. I'm just going to put a little quick coat of plaster on right there at the edges, and that should dry within a day or so, and plenty of time for me to be working on the plaster for the areas that I've got that need that final coat of plaster. So if you have any questions, comments, leave them down below. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you here in the next video. Thanks again for watching.